So Professor Mundel will begin. The idea is that we will talk to you for a little bit, maybe about 20 minutes, and we really look forward to a discussion with you and to answering any questions. Okay. I jumped. There we go.
So thank you for having us. We're excited to talk about something that we're both very passionate about. It's great to have the opportunity to teach courses here at DePaul that look at the intersection of society and media. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about people of color representation in advertising, but also in the media in general. So if you have questions about something that perhaps we're not covering in the slides, we did this purposely so that we can engage in a two-way conversation with the people that are attending the webinar. So please do let us know if you have any questions. So to get us going, I want you to think about these statistics. 44% of the US population is going to be multicultural by 2030. So this means that by 2050, there's not going to be a majority group that is going to be dominating the race diversity here in the United States, like it happens today with whites. And I think the following statistic actually gives quite an interesting perspective, and that is that the population under 30 that is growing is actually Hispanic. So 30% of the population under 30 is Hispanic. So with these numbers in mind, what I would like you to do to kind of like get us going into this discussion is to think about when you were a kid and imagine the time when you first saw a superhero. So who was the first superhero that you were ever exposed to? Was it Superman? Was it Spider-Man? Was it Batman? And in any of those cases, were any of those superheroes a person of color or not? And the answer is, for people that is my age or Professor DeMoya, we actually were normally exposed to white dominant characters on the media. And that actually gives a message to younger audiences that we want to desire to be like those people that are being represented in the media. And when we don't really get to see someone that looks like us or that speaks like us or that has the cultural background that we have, we start shaping our perceptions of who we are and who we want to be based on these perceptions. Can we go to the next slide, please? So when we discuss the purchasing power of minorities and why is it so important to start including people of color in the media, but especially in our area of expertise, that is strategic communication, we need to remember that as these minorities start becoming the dominant majority in the United States, so is their purchasing power changing. So although before the sweet spot to try to target someone were actually white consumers 18 to 45, now we're actually seeing that Hispanics and the Black population are actually increasing in terms of the purchasing power. And actually Asians are the ones that have the strongest purchasing power in among all the different minorities who are young. So as the purchasing power continues to increase, it's projected at 3.9 trillion. And for example, the Hispanic purchasing power was first expected to be at 1.5 trillion, but now it's looking at 1.9 trillion by 2023. And that's quite a significant increase. So what this tells us is that brands can no longer ignore the multicultural consumers. So even if they are not doing it for the right reasons, it's such a big purchasing power that they would be missing out on if they didn't tap into these consumers, that either because of social desirability or because of how things are changing or because they really want to make money, they need to be able to appeal to these consumers. Next slide. So when we develop ads, the norm in the last couple of years was that it was normally someone white, someone young, someone attractive, and there wasn't a lot of diversity in any sense or regard in advertisements in the media. However, as the population continues to change, we're seeing that cultural relevant ads, the ones that actually resonate with intended audiences, actually end up being more effective, and they result in increased brand perception. So the evaluation of a brand gets better and stronger. The advertisement is more effective, which means that it's more persuasive. And also, consumers are more likely to want to purchase something as a result of feeling identified with the models in the advertisements. Next slide. So there is this very interesting website. You can actually Google it just as a title of this slide, Cultural Insights Impact Measure, which looks at the effectiveness of culturally relevant ads. And what they found is that both in 2020 and in 2021, as a result of the racial tensions in the United States and the lack sometimes of representation in advertisements, the effectiveness of advertising has actually been sliding back. And we explain this by consumers' skepticism, which is a dispositional measure in which consumers are likely to distrust the content of advertising. So when the ads are not culturally relevant, what happens is the perceived authenticity behind the ads are actually decreasing, which means that consumers start doubting about the reasons for a brand to actually include a minority in them. And it might be that the consumer thinks that the minority that is being included is being put in there as a token to elicit positive perceptions, or it might happen, like in the case now with Goya, which is a very Hispanic brand, that because of the CEO's actions supporting President Trump, there's like a distrust for anything that tries to appeal to a population that actually was very hurt by the policies of that administration. So in our research that we're doing here in Chicago and in DePaul specifically, what we found is that when things like this happen, consumers perceive these ads as being opportunistic. So this means that the ads are taking advantage of the current situation to the benefit of the brands, and not necessarily because the consumers believe that the ads are being authentic. And now we can move on to the next slide. So what do people like Professor DeMoya and I do as professors in DePaul? We are responsible not only for teaching courses and providing service to our community here in the university, but also we take a look at research and we try to advance the knowledge of how, for example, brands are engaging with different audiences. In a study that was published recently by colleagues of ours, we found that from 2019 to 2021, ads continue to resonate culturally for white non-Hispanics. So what does this mean in plain language? This means that most of the ads are still directed towards white audiences, and these are the audiences that believe that ads are speaking to. So the majority of minority consumers feel that they are not being spoken to, or they're not being taken into consideration when it comes to these brands. These studies also show that, and these statistics actually do change from study to study. So I've seen any percentages between 16 and 20%, but different studies are saying that only 20% of people in ads are actually minorities. And this definitely does not reflect the trends in the general population. And when we talk about minorities, not only do we talk about people of color, but we also talk about sexual orientation, the portrayal of people with disabilities, such as veterans. And this is quite a contrast with the society in which we live in, especially considering that the US has a really large population of veterans who, because of their service to the military, have some sort of disability, and yet they don't see themselves being portrayed in advertisements often. Similarly, Hispanics and the LGBTQ population are also feeling excluded and find that the ads are not being reflective of their true identities in the media. Next. So when an advertisement is produced, of course, the producers or the practitioners behind that ad have a particular type of effect that they want to produce on consumers. And this could be anything from I want consumers to purchase my brand more often to I want to change the perceptions about smoking or any particular objective that they are conveying with the particular advertisement. However, here in my research, what I study is the unintended effects. So the things that the advertisers were not expecting to happen, but they happen anyway as the result of media exposure. So the media is highly responsible for shaping the images that we have of ourselves, and they also point to what is accepted and idealized in society. And if you come back to my example of picturing the superhero, we all kind of, like idealize the people that are on TV as people that have made it and that we want to emulate. So when we don't see minorities in the media, this results in marginalization of people of color, also invisibility. For example, as we were discussing with people with disabilities, are mostly excluded from advertisements as a whole. And it also turns out that we contribute to stereotyping. And what this means is that sometimes, for example, particular types of minorities are casted to be one type of character in an ad. So Mountain Dew got in a lot of backlash not that long ago because of an ad in which they had incarcerated a goat. It was actually a goat, an animal. But in the photo in jail, the goat was surrounded by Black people. So all of a sudden, the only type of people that were, like shown in the ad as being plausible for being in jail were Black people. So this helps perpetuate stereotypes about who are particular types of groups that result in particular actions. And the next slide. So in addition to selling and persuading audiences, some of intended effects that advertising does sometimes accomplish is either assimilation, which pretty much means that a minority group is kind of like brought into the main culture. So if you think about it, when we show that, for example, Hispanics or any other minority are part of a larger group, we're kind of saying that their customs, that their language perhaps is not relevant to being an ad by themselves, but rather that it's important that we're all pulled together. And also it might happen that we do acculturation where pretty much what we're doing is transferring the values and customs from one group to another. And here my colleague, Professor DeMoya, included some images from ads that actually do portray this type of actions. But one of the things that we normally see in advertisements that use minorities is that sometimes they're used to setting the stage. So we all come with baggage associated with media images. And whenever we see them in the media, we activate all these cultural knowledge that we have about a particular group or another. And then our brain starts drawing meaning based on the images that we're seeing. So it might be that, for example, Sofia Vergara, and I couldn't remember her name. Sofia Vergara for a long time was used as a cool Hispanic to connect with Hispanics. So she was included in pretty much every advertisement that was out there in mainstream media. And it doesn't mean necessarily that Sofia Vergara represents the entire Latino community, since there are many people from different ethnicities and from many different countries that make up the Latin ethnicity. So I think with this, I think the next slide is actually for Professor DeMoya, but I would like to keep talking to the audience after her presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan. You set it up perfectly because I want to continue by looking a little bit more at stereotyping and why it happens. So why do we rely on stereotypes at all if stereotyping is bad and undesirable? So the question that I will ask you is, what is going on in this picture? Who are these people? Advertising has 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute to give you an idea. So if they're selling you that kitchen furniture or they're selling you those plates, they need you to imagine the setting of a family sitting down at dinner, right? So they got the boy, the girl, the mom, the dad. And your brain, like Dr. Mundel said, fills in the blanks with the cultural knowledge that we have. So the funny thing is that because many of us were not exposed to people like us in the past, we could see ourselves in that image, right? We weren't as aware of that differences. But now, of course, I'm talking decades ago, now we are aware and we understand that this doesn't represent us. It represents another group of people. So yes, we see a family, but we don't see a family that represents us or a family that is like us. And consider, again, looking at the picture of family. Think about same-sex couples, childrenless family, mothers and grown-up daughters that live together and take care of each other. So family has a lot of shapes and forms, but the traditional advertising cultural value that is shared is the two parents, heterosexual, usually white or white presenting, and the two kids, right? So, what is the problem with the advertising? There's with the stereotypes in advertising. There's three main reasons why we still use them. First of all, they're effective. If you have seen this Popeyes advertising and you are bothered by it, you have every right to be bothered by it. It is stereotypical. It is reductive. The accent is very exaggerated. All the Cajun cooking and all that, right? However, tell me you do not want to eat what this woman is cooking, right? So that's the idea. The idea is that at the end of the day, even though our conscious brain understands that they're pandering to us, our unconscious brain is like, yes, I am having those beans because she looks like a person that knows how to cook. The same with this third image. The Abuelita is a brand of, Abuelita's grandmother, and it's a brand of hot chocolate. And I remember the first time that I bought this brand of hot chocolate was precisely because of the image of the abuelita, right? So who's going to make this delicious hot chocolate with cinnamon? It's going to be your grandma. It was the breakfast that my grandma used to give us in the weekends when we would visit. So that is one of the things. They are reductive, but they're effective. And that's why we still use them. The second thing, and I believe Dr. Mundel referred to this, is that it communicates an ideal type. And this is the real problem. So when we think about products that everybody uses, I think I'm frozen. Okay. When we think about products that everybody uses, like cereal or underwear, right? There's no need for one specific type of person to be the person promoting that product. But because advertising tends to go towards the aspirational, they show us the people that they believe we want to see. So what we find attractive and desirable. And there's also a missed opportunity in communicating. That's one of the main problems with advertising. You're missing the opportunity to influence and affect culture if you're limiting yourself to the ideal types. Thankfully, one of the good news is that even though, like Juan said, research shows that still the majority is not diverse, there is a lot more diversity in advertising. There is a lot more diversity in advertising than there was 10 years ago, and definitely than there was 20 years ago. So brands and advertisers have realized that to connect with people, like Juan mentioned, it is more effective to appeal to culture. So they are being more inclusive in representing people, not only when they're trying to sell us a product that is for us. Right? So not only when they're trying to make me think of my abuelita, but when they want me to buy shoes in general, a general market product that everybody could use. So how do we go, or what is the role that advertising has in breaking down stereotypes? Again, this is one of the areas in which advertising can have a lot of power, because one of the things that advertising can do is normalize. And like Juan said, we're talking about advertising, but we're also talking about media. I'm probably older than many of you, but I remember the first time that I saw a person living with AIDS was in the real world San Francisco, right? And I remember his name was Pedro, and I had never seen anybody living with AIDS. Nobody in my family lived with AIDS, but because I fell in love with this character, he was an amazingly beautiful person. I learned a lot about him because of this TV show. And what this TV show did is that it broke down Pedro into a regular guy, right? So this guy who was gay and who was living with AIDS was a person that was completely foreign or even artificial to me, but because of the TV show, it became more familiar. So one time exposure won't do it, right? So I remember that one case because it was very memorable. But when we're exposed to these ideas over and over again, things that seem strange or minority or undesirable or just not done are all of a sudden not a big deal, are normalized. So the Always Like a Girl campaign, you probably remember, was very popular. It was based on research that showed them that the same age when girls start to get their period is when they start to lose their self-esteem. So it was a very good fit because one of the things about this type of brand is that for many people, these are lifelong brands, right? So they begin using them at 13, 15, and they're probably going to use them most of their lives. So they create a lot of loyalty. So the brand wanted to appeal to that younger generation and also encourage the mother or the father to buy it for their child, right? So it was all building this loyalty while at the same time breaking down stereotypes in a way that was A, obvious, and B, very simple. So we could all understand it, we could all relate to it. The Always Like a Girl campaign has continued, and they have gone to a little bit more extreme, radical, less typical cases. So my question here, or the thing that I really want to talk to you about is when does it become unauthentic, right? So as Juan mentioned, if you don't have that authenticity, if it feels like tokenism, I have never, outside of advertising or movies, seen a girl play football with boys. Right. So I've seen adult women play football with adult men, but in like at a school age girl play football with boys. When we are calling attention to these extremes, are we doing it for the shock value? Are we doing it to appeal to people, or are we being authentic? I'm not going to make a judgment about always. I do think that some of their advertising, like any brand, is better than others. Right. So I think that's the problem. When are we being authentic, and when are we trying to appeal to the shock value or get the free publicity? Because a lot of this advertising, when it is shocking enough, weird enough, or groundbreaking enough, it gets covered not only in the trade publications, but in popular media. So it gets multiplied in a way that really rewards the company that invested in it. So authentic is real. Authenticity is one of those terms that is super difficult to define, but that is in a way very simple. And the example that I always use is Mexican food. I'm from the Dominican Republic. And in fact, in my country, we didn't have Mexican food until not too long ago. And for me, Mexican food was Tex-Mex, right? So I needed the sour cream, the guacamole, all that thing. And I remember the first time I went to an authentic Mexican restaurant, my reaction was, this is not Mexican food. Like, what is wrong here? So what is funny about authenticity is that even though we understand that authenticity is about being real, it's about being real the way that our consumers believe that reality is, right? So it was more important for that restaurant to sell me the taco that I was used to with all the flourish than it was to appeal to real Mexican authenticity if they wanted to keep me as a customer. Thankfully, since living in Chicago, I have had authentic Mexican food, and I am less ignorant again about Mexican food now. But the same goes for when you go to a destination. You expect an experience, and if you don't receive it, you're like, this is not the real Las Vegas or the real New Orleans, right? So brands need to be strategic, and they need to be doing it for the right reasons. And I have had a lot of people ask me and participate in conversations of, how do you know that you do it right? How do you not fall into tokenism? And I think there are two good rules of thumb. The first one is, are you portraying people that could genuinely use the product, right? So in this advertising for man's clothes, man use the clothes, and they're not limiting themselves to the 22 to 26-year-old slim guy that we're all familiar with from the Abercrombie and Fish advertising. They're being more inclusive, more diverse, just like men are diverse. Again, the Lego advertising, you might remember the image to the right or to my right was the original one that came out in the 80s, I believe. Please forgive me if I'm not remembering the date right. And then they redid the advertising recently. But again, Legos are a toy that you don't have to be of a certain gender to play with. They're a toy that could appeal to everybody. So it was at the time groundbreaking while really, really authentic and really real to the product. So you saw the image from the Gillette advertising. Some people loved it, the best a man can be. Some people hated it. I loved it and hated it. But what's interesting is that this advertising was the beginning of a bigger campaign for Gillette in which they were going to be more inclusive. And they have done advertising for their Venus products that I love. So it includes people with vitiligo is this, and pardon me, I think I pronounced it in Spanish, but is this skin condition in which you have different tones of your skin. So this model is one of the people they feature. They feature people who are non-gender conforming. They feature people who have lots of freckles, right? So don't necessarily conform to the ideal image beauty, but at the same time they shave their legs. So it's really somebody who genuinely uses the product. So rule number one, be genuine in terms of your consumer. Rule number two, if you have the opportunity to make a statement, right, authentically make it. There was no reason why Gillette could not be more inclusive in their advertising. Okay, and I think that's beautiful. Target is a brand that I am not a big fan of. I think they're overpriced. That's just my opinion. However, their advertising is awesome. And it is awesome because they don't make us think about their inclusivity. They just put it in there. So one of the things that Target did not so long ago is that they included a campaign with makeup campaign with almost all Latinas or presented, physically like Latinas, and a Spanish language song, Soy Yo, Colombian group, in mainstream media. So not only in Univision, right? Not only in Spanish language media, but they included it everywhere. So that's another way in which you are being inclusive. You're making a statement. You don't need to understand the lyrics of the song to know that these women feel happy and beautiful using this makeup palette, right? So it was actually very, very good for Target. So I'm not going to go too deep into this because this could take us hours, but one of the things that people talk about in addition to inclusivity is what about social change, right? What responsibility do brands have? And there are so many things that I could say about this, but I will say maybe I'll try to stick to maybe three. First of all, when we think about diversity with brands, and we see that the diverse people that they portray are celebrities, are sports heroes, are, people who are famous or infamous for one reason or another, they're not really being as diverse as we think they are, because they're still banking on the celebrity of Colin Kaepernick. Almost like if they had, I do not know other football players. So if they had other football players in their brand, right? They chose to use Colin Kaepernick in their advertising. I support it. I was very happy that Colin got the money, right? So I'm not saying that he was not deserving of being featured in advertising. What I'm saying is from the brand's perspective, sometimes the risk or the effort is not really as much about inclusivity as it is about calling attention. So if you heard about this advertising, chances are that you heard about it secondhand through social media or traditional media because it created so much buzz. And Nike has continued to use this social voice in their advertising, even though one of the problems that I personally have with Nike, and that's why I'm picking on them, and not on Colin Kaepernick, I want to be 100% clear, is that they have issues with diversity and inclusion inside their own company. They have a board of employees who told them it's hypocritical for you to be advertising around Black Lives Matter and around Black empowerment when we don't have equal opportunity. We think that you should hold the advertising. And the CEO not only did the company launch the advertising, but the CEO put out a press release saying something like, "Oh, make no mistake, there's no place for bigotry at Nike." So a lot of postering, and not so much action behind their words. Now, one of the questions that I got from the alumni that I thought was very interesting is, how about the creativity that is in the Black community, in the Latino community, in the Asian American community, Native community? People of color are super creative. We don't always get the recognition that we deserve. We don't always get the attention that we need. This is where I love the power of social media. So I have recently started doing group research into Afro-Latinas. And I have found that there are several Afro-Latinas diasporas that are very powerful, especially in Instagram. They bring together, the first one has 73,000 followers. They bring together people. They not only promote history or culture, but they also promote products. They also promote the artist. So what does this tell me, or why am I bringing it up? We can harness the power of advertising, right? The targeting of reaching specific consumers, the strategic messaging, the choosing the right channels, the highlighting the right influencers or spokespeople to make it about our community. And in a way that can be a lot more powerful than having one of the people that we can relate to featured in a Nike ad. So again, these Afro-Latina communities have made an effort to combine advertising. I assume it's not paid. I don't know if it is, because they're advertising their own members, to combine advertising with advocacy. And because it is theirs, because it is something that that they experience and they feel that and they belong to, it is authentic and it's real, and it's honestly a great change of pace, right? So I encourage you to look for those communities that you might feel an affinity with, be it ethnic, cultural, sports. There is a great community of artists on Instagram or Pinterest or LinkedIn, right? So many ways in which we can use advertising in a way that can really harness the creativity of the people who don't always get that voice or that opportunity to be featured. So I will leave it there. Like I said, I really want us to have a good conversation. Thank you so much for your attention, especially these days where there's so much Zoom meetings and you're probably zoomed out. But Juan and I look forward to taking your questions. What would you guys like to talk about? Let's see.
Oh, we do have a question.
Okay, from Marina, right?
Yes. So
okay.
for the Hispanic young population, does Spanish language advertising play an important role since many of the young people are bilingual? Or is the cultural relevance and representation more important? And for you, as bilingual speakers, is Spanish language advertising more impactful? Well, good question.
Okay, so I'll take the first part. I guess Juan, you can take the cultural relevance part. Okay, so 1/3 of Latinos speak Spanish only. 1/3 of Latinos speak Spanish and English, and the last third speak only English. What advertisers have found is that it is a very, very bad idea to limit themselves to one language. Mainly because the ones that are English speaking only do not want to be, they want to be represented and considered as Latinos as well. So speaking Spanish is not conditional to be Latino, right? So Latino is an ethnicity, it's a culture. Most advertisers do very creatively, which I love, include a few Spanish words. So for example, my sister has kids, they're bilingual, except for the third one who for some reason prefers English, but he calls my mother abuelita, right? So there's still a few words that they do in Spanish. And this is very typical of a Latino household. And I have found that advertisers use that language exchange very creatively and very intelligently to incorporate people who prefer Spanish and who prefer English. In fact, I think if I had to guess, I think there is more bilingual advertising now than of major brands, at least major consumer brands, than one language or the other. But that is a guess. I haven't tested that hypothesis.
Thank you. So when we talk about cultural relevance, I think that follow-up question is actually very important. You got to remember that Spanish as a language is just as English, not a standard language, and not every country speaks the same variation of Spanish. So whenever you do decide to target the Hispanic population with Spanish, you need to be very careful for many reasons. First of all, you cannot hire your niece that went to high school and learned Spanish to translate for you, because then we see very big mistakes in the translations. And actually that turns the audiences off, because there's not an authentic and significant enough effort to actually make sure that the translation was accurate. But in addition to that, speaking culturally relevant to these Latinos is complicated, because we all have very specific cultures. So for example, Maria is from the Dominican Republic, I am from Argentina, and the two countries have significant differences in terms of how we express our national culture and our preferences for communication as well. So trying to find a standardized way to speak to Latinos is actually quite difficult, and the representation is important, but again, not when it's forced. So actually, Professor DeMoya shared in one of her classes a really cool ad that I actually love to show in my classes now, which was done by Coca-Cola, in which they showed that the way to connect with Hispanic consumers was actually by showing that every country in Latin America loves Coca-Cola, right? And we all drink it with a side of the favorite dishes that we eat in our countries. So that was a good way to speak culturally relevant to this entire group of Latinos without excluding anyone or falling into a generalization that all Latinos like Mexican food, because just as Maria said, for example, I only tried Mexican food when I moved to the US. And I'm not sure if I could even call that food Mexican of what I tried at the time. And finally, for that last bit of a question, do we think that Spanish is more impactful? That's actually quite a difficult question to answer. I think that while I'm here, my brain is constantly in English mode. So every so often now, Hulu finally realized that I'm Hispanic after years of watching Hulu. So every so often, Hulu ad is going to be in Spanish, and it throws me off waiting for the ad to be in Spanish. So I actually see it as a forced kind of like attempt from Hulu to feed me something in Spanish rather than feeling as an authentic way to connect with me as a consumer. So there's many things to take into account.
You know, I think that is a great question. And to tell you the truth, I hadn't thought about it a lot. Spanish is not as big a part of my identity as you would think. It is an inherited language. I like Dominican slang. I like music, right? So I feel appealed to. It's more impactful when the music is fun and you can dance to. When they use phrases that I'm like, oh my God, I thought that phrase, we only said it in the DR, but it turns out they also say it in, you know, whatever other context. When there's a scene that I can identify with, right? So one of the advertisers that I like for multicultural is Wells Fargo. Now this company has issues. That's another topic, but they created this great ad in which a young girl, a young woman comes home with a check, her first paycheck. And the abuelita is like, oh, take a picture, I'm gonna frame it, right? So I did not live that experience, but I can relate to it because every triumph in my family and in many Latino families that are very close is celebrated among everybody. So when I can see the cultural appeal, it's a lot more impactful than the language, unless we're talking about specific Dominican slang. Kind of that brings back a memory.
The next question in the chat from Ruth, what is the role of big data in the trajectory of targeted advertising? And actually, that's a great question. I think that this actually fits excellently into the discussion of, will AI be able to replace human talent in advertising? And the answer to that question is no. So one of the complexities of actually using big data to try to appeal to these consumers is that there are so many different types of Latinos with so many different experiences that just as Hulu is showing me the wrong kind of advertisements that actually make me feel angry, they don't know enough, or big data doesn't know enough about the consumer to know, for example, if they are first, second, or third generation Hispanic. Or, for example, a construct that I like to use in my own research, which is ethnic identification. So that means I might be Latino, but I might have spent, like most of my adult life here in the United States, and I may be thinking in terms of the US society, right? So perhaps, as Maria is saying, Spanish is not a really big part of her identity. Therefore, there are people that identify more with their ethnicity, and this could be in any of ethnicities, right? Same with Asian Americans or African Americans. And so the more that you identify with your group, the more likely you are to find that advertisement culturally relevant and to be appealing to you. And right now, AI doesn't have enough information about users to be able to produce the exact type of targeted ads that would result in positive evaluation. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, but actually now it seems like the industry is trying to take care of not providing too much information and starting to limit the amount of tracking that we can do over users. So hopefully this is not going to be a thing moving forward.
I stopped the share just because my computer was slow, and I wanted to make sure that that wasn't the issue. But I want to just add very quickly to what Juan said. Big data is super useful for trend spotting, for example, right? So we can see that women of a certain age are all interested in X, right? So I imagine Spanx when it came out or something like that. However, what I have found super interesting and useful is this kind of ethnographic qualitative observation that we can do on social media. And it can give you a lot of information that aggregated data could not give you. And advertisers are using that information together with the trend spotting and the social listening abilities of aggregated data.
Thank you. One last question. Thinking about purchasing power, do you feel this increased purchasing power by people of color is what's kind of leading corporate America to be take more of an activist role? For example, the corporation Coca-Cola out of Atlanta, and their letter to the legislature there opposing the voting restrictions. Do you feel like that there's a correlation between the increased purchasing power and the corporations, these brands wanting to show that they are advocates for people of color, leading to their actions? I
think, April, that is a good question. And sadly, I don't know the answer factually. I can share my opinion because I never miss an opportunity to share my opinion. I think that it is the multiplying effect of the media attention that they get when they take a stand. News releases are one of the oldest tools that a company has used. 5 years ago, news releases were dead, super dead, right? You could put out the newest technology and everybody would ignore your release. However, today, I don't know, a flour company says that they're only going to be purchasing flour from organically grown or responsibly grown, and it becomes a news story. And because of targeted media, it reaches specifically the people that care about it. Not only that, but if you're looking at, let's consider Black Lives Matter, because there's a lot of appropriation going on in Black Lives Matter. You click on the hashtag, and not only do you get the activist, the debate, but you also get the ad. So it allows them to reach an audience that they weren't able to reach before. That's why for me, unless I see other types of action behind the advertising or the announcement, I give them very little credit for that. But that's, like I said, that's my opinion. I can't tell you factually how impactful or why they're making these decisions.
Thank you.
So because we have a couple of minutes, how about the participants? How do you feel about when companies take a stand? I sometimes I feel that I kind of talk to myself a lot. I know how I feel, but what are some companies that you feel have done well in their inclusive or socially driven advertising? You can put in the chat.
In the meantime, as the comments come in, I would say that one of the things that I look at very closely is whether or not the brands are announcing exactly what their actions are going to be to fight against racism. So there's nothing that bothers me more in advertising that the companies that say, we hear you, we stand by you, period, right? So companies make a lot of money out of consumers, and consumers expect companies to help drive social progress and change. And therefore, since they're making a profit out of minorities, I think that the best route, and this is something that if anyone in the audience is in the industry should take note of, do something about it, right? So for example, Warby Parker did an amazing social media campaign where they announced that they were pledging $1 million to organizations to fight against racism, programs for their Black employees to be able to express concerns and support during this time of unrest. And these are ways in which the brands are actually showing that their actions speak louder than their words. So, you know, there's gotta be some commitment from brands in order for consumers to actually trust these CSR claims that they're doing. Ruthie says, I have little trust in corporate advertising. It seems to be more about money than social change. Society is changing and the corporations are just following the trends. So yeah, this is a view that many consumers have. And it seems that the corporate social responsibility programs are there to try to show the opposite side of your argument here. However, companies are profit driven, right? So unless you make it a top priority for your brand to advance change, it really won't have too much of an impact. However, there are some brands that are having quite an impact in there. One of the things to consider is one of the biggest debates in advertising is if whether advertising reflects society or if advertising shapes society. And we can say that it's a little bit of both, right? So, for example, Raven has been one of the companies that has been showcasing LGBT couples in their ads for years, even when it wasn't kind of, you know, like as accepted as it is today. So even when it's not all over the media, they are still pushing for change one ad at a time. And in many cases, when companies do take a stand, they actually lose a lot of consumers. Professor DeMoya was mentioning before the Gillette ad, be the best man that you can be. And actually a lot of the men that had this toxic masculinity kind of like embedded in them went into a boycott against Gillette because of, you know, like, you're not gonna tell me what I should be doing or how I should be behaving.
I think I will never, ever be mad at a company for making money. Never. That's what they do. I'm perfectly fine with that. I am mad at companies when they appropriate and deviate from the issue. So I don't think that has happened with Black Lives Matter. I think companies have jumped on the bandwagon. Some are doing more than others, but they have not been able to deviate from Black Lives Matter to turn it into buy this T-shirt to save Black lives, right? And companies did do that with breast cancer awareness. That was more the Susan G. Komen Foundation's fault than the companies, but it did happen. It reduced, there was no knowledge, no education. Breast cancer turned into Save the Tatas T-shirts. it really got reduced and marginalized. So that's the part where I really have a problem with it. And like you mentioned, Ruthie, consumers are smart. They're smart. There's a few consumers that are going to feel good about buying from this brand because this brand had so-and-so in the advertising. But those of us who really care about the issue that they're addressing, we're going to look into what are you really doing? And we might even stop buying from that brand. Now, there are many, many reasons why people buy from one company or another. And social perspective is not the only one. And just to give you a very quick example, Amazon is evil. And I order in Amazon at least once a week. And I'm making a concerted effort to not order as much in Amazon, but the freaking convenience keeps me coming back, right? So there are many reasons why we purchase from a product. Advertising is one, their social stance is another, but also culture, familiarity, access, price point, right? That make our decision.
Okay, thank you so very much for a wonderful discussion. The diverse perspectives that you've provided related to the topic has been so very insightful. And so on behalf of the Office of Alumni Relations, I would like to thank all of our participants as well as our guests. The next perspectives on racial justice is anti-Asian hate crimes and xenophobia, and that will take place on May 14th. And if you are interested in learning more about the Black Alumni or Latinx Alumni chapter, please check out our Facebook page. And also, if you want to learn about opportunities on how to join the committee, please send an email to our advisor, April Garrett, and we will put her information in the chat, but it is a.garrett, GARRETT, @depaul.edu. Thank you so much for attending tonight's event. Have a great night.